After visiting the temple of Kshirachora Gopinath of Remuna at Balasore in Orissa, the Lord proceeded towards Puri, and on the way visited the temple of Sakshi Gopal, who appeared as a witness in the matter of two Brahmana devotees' family quarrel. Gopal is the actual name of the deity, Krishna deity, and because he became a witness in Sanskrit is called Sakshi. So he became the witness Gopal. He became a witness. This pastime is brought out in Chaitanya Charitamrita in great detail in Madhya Leela chapter 5, the activities of Sakshi Gopal. Very interesting chapter. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu heard the history of Sakshi Gopal from Lord Nityananda Prabhu. The Lord heard the story of Sakshi Gopal with great pleasure because he wanted to impress upon the atheists that the worshipable deities in the temples approved by the great acharyas are not idols as alleged by men with a poor fund of knowledge. The deity in the temple is the Archa incarnation of the personality of Godhead, and thus the deity is identical with the Lord in all respects. He responds to the proportion of the devotee's affection for him. That the deity is the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself is very clear from the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam in the section known as the Uddhava Gita. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, there's a section called the Uddhava Gita where Lord Krishna is speaking to Uddhava. Just as he had spoken to Arjuna the Bhagavad Gita, he had spoken another set of instructions called the Uddhava Gita, and therein there is in fact one whole chapter that discusses deity worship. It is here, chapter 27 of the 11th canto, and you can very clearly see that the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself is stating this in right there in Srimad Bhagavatam. He's stating that this is how you worship me, and this is exactly how you make a deity form of me. See, this is just a chapter summary, but you can see here very clearly how the deity should be worshipped, how to install the deity, and so on. See, Uddhava is asking, how can we worship you in your deity form? And the Supreme Lord, he explains, see, one should carefully worship me by selecting one of the three methods by which I receive sacrifice, Vedic, Tantric, or mixed. So anyway, this is a very detailed description, but deity worship is directly sanctioned in the Vedic scriptures, and the deity is Archa Avatar. He is one of the different incarnations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to impress this upon the devotees. In the story of Sakshi Gopal, in which there was a family misunderstanding by two devotees of the Lord, in order to mitigate the turmoil as well as to show specific favor to his servitors, travelled from Vrindavan to Vidyanagar, a village in Orissa, in the form of his Archa incarnation. From there, the deity was brought to Katak, and thus the temple of Sakshi Gopal is even today visited by thousands of pilgrims on the way to Jagannath Puri. The Lord stayed overnight there and began to proceed toward Puri. On the way, his sannyas rod was broken by Nityananda Prabhu. The Lord became apparently angry with him about this and went alone to Puri, leaving his companions behind. The place where the Lord's sannyas rod was broken is called Dandabhanga, and that place is still there. One can visit that place. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu displayed the pastime of being apparently angry with Lord Nityananda Prabhu, and he said that either you go ahead or I go ahead. And the Supreme Lord, he was requested by the devotees to go ahead, so he went to Jagannath Puri alone by himself. At Puri, when he entered the temple of Jagannath, he became at once saturated with transcendental ecstasy and fell down on the floor of the temple unconscious. The custodians of the temple could not understand the transcendental feats of the Lord, but there was a great learned Pandit named Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya who was present, and he could understand that the Lord's losing his consciousness upon entering the Jagannath temple was not an ordinary thing. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who was the chief appointed Pandit in the court of the king of Orissa Maharaj Pratap Rudra, was attracted by the youthful luster of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and could understand that such a transcendental trance was only rarely exhibited, and only then by the topmost devotees who were already on the transcendental plane in complete forgetfulness of material existence. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was very well read in the scriptures, so he knew that this is an extraordinary act. This is a spontaneous act. This is not um, put on as a show by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Only a liberated soul could show such a transcendental feat. And the Bhattacharya, who was vastly learned, could understand this in the light of the transcendental literature with which he was familiar. He therefore asked the custodians of the temple not to disturb the unknown sannyasi. He asked them to take the Lord to his home so he could be further observed in his unconscious state. The Lord was at once carried to the home of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who at that time had sufficient power of authority due to his being the Sabha Pandit, or the state dean of faculty in Sanskrit literatures. So he was a well learned scholar, Vasudeva Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. The learned Pandit wanted to scrutinizingly test the transcendental feats of Lord Chaitanya, because often unscrupulous devotees imitate physical feats in order to flaunt transcendental achievements just to attract innocent people and take advantage of them. We know from the Chaitanya Bhagavat that during the time of Haridas Thakur, who was actually an earlier contemporary of Lord Chaitanya, he was elder to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as far as his manifestation is concerned. At one time when Haridas Thakur exhibited some ecstasy, there was one a snake charmer who was playing his instrument with which to control snakes. And in Chaitanya Bhagavat Adi Leela chapter 16, and here is an English translation of a portion of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's chapter summary. One day, in a rich man's house, a snake charmer was glorifying Krishna's pastimes at Kaliya Daha. As soon as Haridas heard the glories of Krishna, he fell unconscious on the ground. Pure ecstatic transformations manifested in his transcendental body. Everyone began to take dust from Haridas's feet and smear it all over their bodies. Seeing this, a cheating low-class Brahmin began to display artificial emotions by imitating Haridas in order to attain more prestige. When the snake charmer understood the duplicity of the pseudo-Brahmin, he severely beat him with a stick. Then the Brahmin helplessly left that place. The snake charmer then explained to everyone the authenticity of Haridas and the duplicity of the pseudo-Brahmin. So, we understand that there were people who were trying to imitate the symptoms of spontaneous ecstasy exhibited by advanced Vaishnavas. So this learned Pandit Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya wanted to scrutinize and test, is Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he appears to be a fully liberated soul, but just in case, let me check. A learned scholar like the Bhattacharya can detect such impostors, and when he finds them out, he at once rejects them. In the case of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Bhattacharya tested all the symptoms in the light of the Shastras. He tested as a scientist, not as a foolish sentimentalist. This is a lesson for us, that we should be able to understand Vaishnavas and the quality of one's Vaishnavism on the basis of externally verifiable symptoms. Krishna consciousness is a science. Srila Prabhupada referred to the nectar of devotion as the complete signs of Bhakti Yoga. It is not meant to be uh, distorted by foolish sentimentalism. Um, this is a point that I often make, that even in the Bhagavad Gita, when Arjuna is asking Krishna, Sthita Pragyasya ka bhasha, he, even at that place, uh, notice Prabhupada explaining, as there are symptoms for each and every man in terms of his particular situation. Similarly, one who is Krishna conscious has his particular nature, talking, walking, thinking, feeling, etc. As a rich man has his symptoms by which he is known as a rich man. As a diseased man has symptoms by which he is known as diseased. Or as a learned man has his symptoms. So a man in transcendental consciousness of Krishna has specific symptoms in various dealings. One can know his specific symptoms from the Bhagavad Gita. Most important is how the man in Krishna consciousness speaks, for speech is the most important quality of any man. So these are externally verifiable symptoms. One does not have to be rich in order to understand if someone else is rich. One does not have to be diseased in order to understand if someone else is diseased. One does not have to be a greatly learned person in order to understand if someone else is greatly learned. Similarly, one does not have to be in full transcendental consciousness of Krishna in order to understand if somebody else is in full transcendental consciousness of Krishna. So similarly, Vasudeva Sarvabhauma, he observed the various symptoms of a liberated soul as they have been set out in the scriptures. He observed the movement of the stomach, the beating of the heart, and the breathing of the nostrils. He also felt the pulse of the Lord and saw that all his bodily activities were in complete suspension. When he put a small cotton swab before the nostrils, he found that there was a slight breathing as the fine fibers of cotton moved slightly. Thus he came to know that the Lord's unconscious trance was genuine, and he began to treat him in the prescribed fashion. But Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu could only be treated in a special way. He would respond only to the resounding of the holy names of the Lord by his devotees. This is another lesson for us. If we want to attract the attention of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we have to become a devotee of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We have to become at least a servant of the Lord's associates through the disciplic line. And we should loudly call out Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Then the Lord will respond to us. This special treatment was unknown to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya because the Lord was still unknown to him. When the Bhattacharya saw him for the first time in the temple, he simply took him to be one of many pilgrims. This is another lesson to be learnt. If Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu does not allow us to understand his position, we will not be able to understand him. We will think that he is just one amongst many different Vaishnavas. Look at this important verse from Bhagavad Gita. Naham prakasha sarvasya yogamaya samavritah mudhoyam nabhijanati loko mamajam avyayam. I am never manifest to the foolish and unintelligent. For them I am covered by my internal potency, and therefore they do not know that I am unborn and infallible. Because Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Supreme Personality of Godhead, and we are influenced by Maya. Maya makes us foolish. Maya makes us unintelligent. Therefore, we do not understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even if He is present right in front of us. So, what was faced by Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya is also faced by us.